Against all odds, you have landed here at the Foxfire Farmhouse again for yet another episode of your favorite podcast in the podcast world.
Indeed you have.
I'm Josh.
I'm Elijah.
Elijah.
Oh, camera's over here.
Camera,
Hi there.
Camera right. Yeah.
Welcome.
Glad to have you.
Yeah.
Glad you've made it once again.
Yeah, I was just having to grapple with my hat because this is like, I don't know. Do you think about like what you wear before you get on the podcast?
Not really. I just don't assume people watch it.
Yeah, well,
Assume people listen to it.
for those who listen,
Yep.
I try to wear the same hat every time.
I've
been trying to. Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah, a little Dodgers fan action here.
Check out the YouTube just to see Elijah's hat.
It's gorgeous. I wear it to work, so it's going to get dirtier over the
Nice.
over the season.
Course of time,
Yeah.
just continually
Eventually, it's just going to be
dirtier.
like a piece of blue thread
That's
that
gonna
I
be
wear
awesome.
on my head.
Nice. So
Yeah.
we're here again with each other to talk about all things storytelling and digital media. If this is your first time on the podcast, thank you for joining us, and we'd love to hear how you found out about us, but we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
We talk about storytelling and digital media often, most of the time, having to do with movies.
The cornucopia of digital media.
Yes.
That
And
is
so
the
we
Foxfire.
are here to talk about movies again today.
Once again.
Yep. So that's what we do. And to kick that off, we are going to talk about some movie news, things that are happening in the movie world.
Breaking news.
Netflix is about to die.
Dun dun dun.
Of course, that's not really true. Netflix is a powerhouse in the streaming industry.
They can get smaller.
They can, and they have. In fact, they posted one of their biggest loss, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's their only time they've posted a loss.
Yep.
In the time of their existence, basically.
So, yeah.
And it was not just a loss; it was a massive loss. Compared to, I think it was almost $2 billion worth of stock value.
Yeah.
Overnight, it was almost 35% drop in stock price. I mean, it was really steep.
Plummet.
Responding to a loss of subscribers that they've had, and we've talked about some of their losses in the past.
Yep.
And this loss was fresh off of the presses. I think in the previous time we talked about movie news.
Yeah.
But I came across an article on Vulture magazine that was shared on Twitter that was really fascinating talking about it. So I just wanted to bring it up again to just, talk about Netflix and streaming, since this is kind of our thing. So
The implications.
yeah. One of the most interesting implications I saw drawn out from the author of this article, and I should have written down the name of the author, but you can go check it out. Search for Netflix's biggest
names.
losses. No names.
Unknown.
No bylines.
No credit.
Hang on. I can pull it up here in just a second so that you actually have credit, Mr.
Audience doesn't
or
need it.
Mrs. Tom. I don't know.
Mrs. Tom.
Mrs. Tom.
Hi,
You know,
Mrs. Tom.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe she would prefer me not even to list her name.
Just Tom.
Yeah, just Tom. That'll work.
Tom.
So-
Doesn't like pronouns like that.
Joseph Adalian.
Adalian.
I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm sorry about that, Joseph. But
Interesting.
yeah, so he wrote this article on Vulture talking about Netflix's bad habits have caught up with it.
Yep.
And what he said, one of the things he said, was that Netflix has been pouring tons of money into new content, and they've been able to justify the crazy spending on the basis of continued subscriber gains. So apparently, just at the end of last year, the CEO of Netflix was saying that they were on track to hit, I think they had 222 million subscribers, and they said they were on track to hit 500 million by the end of the year, or that's what by the end of 2022. That was their target.
Yeah.
Of course, now they've adjusted what they've been saying, and they're saying that they're looking at losing even more the next 3 months before they start to see gains. But Netflix apparently, according to the author, has been talking of this virtuous cycle that you dump the money into the production, and the more money you dump into production, the more things you've got in the pipeline, the more interested people are to come on, and you get more and more subscribers, and basically the increased growth that's going to result from dumping all this money there is going to counterbalance the spending.
Yeah.
But that's not happening. And like we talked about last time, there's several reasons why that's happening, why that's not happening. But then what he said is interesting. Another thing he said that was very interesting is that now that they are hitting these losses, Netflix can't pivot for like 3 years.
Nope.
It's insane. I mean, because the production schedule of these things are so long.
They can't pivot in a major way. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to be, the stuff that's coming out this year is stuff that was worked on 2 or 3 years ago and started production. The stuff that is going to come out next year is already in the can, like too far gone to stop it and pivot and change it.
Yeah.
And so year 3 is the best chance they have it starting to move. And even then that's still a stretch.
Yeah.
So they're such a behemoth that they really can't pivot much.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you got to think about like the fact that like the way that they operate is that they're maintaining the license for all of these movies, and they have it scheduled out so far because I mean you're going up. Like you can see a nice gradient. You can see the path that it's heading, but nobody saw the 20. Was it, when did COVID start again? 2020.
Yeah.
That horrible year. It just
The year of death.
it ruined everybody's timeline for everything.
Yeah.
They didn't see that coming, and nobody did, and they didn't see all of their competitors really making headway like they did.
They did.
Because they were on top, and I think in some way, in a lot of ways they're the OG, but I think other like Disney Plus I think is another, I think one of their major competitors, and HBO Max are like up there. Well, Amazon Prime as well.
Right.
Like those are the three trying to take on the big boy at the play park.
Yep.
So yeah,
And we'll see how that competition plays out and who wins.
they might all lose.
I was going to say it's kind of it's the sort of thing that maybe everyone might just lose. So
Is streaming, is it the future?
I say yes,
Yeah.
but I don't know that it is the future.
Yeah.
In other words, it's like the people who said books are the future, or TV is the future, or radio is the future. All of those things still exist today.
Yep.
And they still exist together.
Yep.
It's just what is the overall ecosystem going to look like?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're still waiting on.
For sure. Yeah.
One of the implications of this that I think are really fascinating and that I hope to in my lifetime capitalize on, I say in my lifetime, I need to capitalize on it soon if I'm going to do it, is just that for people who want to make movies and be involved in just making them, one of the big things that they don't want to do, or that is not it's not the stereotype that people think of when they think of I want to be a film director.
Yeah.
Right. When they think of film directing, they're thinking of you're on set with a camera, with a crew, and a sweet cast of characters. Right. That's what you picture making movies, or you could picture, I guess, the editing and the kind of back end work. But you're picturing production. But if your movie's going to make money, if you're going to have the monies for the production, you have to have some distribution plan. There's a lot of business stuff that goes on in making a movie. Every film, if it's not done by a studio, is often its own business. They file an LLC for that film.
Yeah.
And so, though that's the kind of thing that you don't want to think about, it's the kind of thing you have to think about.
Yeah.
And for people who are interested in making stuff, there's an awesome opportunity right now to get something made. If you can figure out how to get it made, financed and taken care of, where you have a product at the end of it and you can take it to a streaming service and say, hey, here, I have a package ready for you to license. And especially if you have a built-in audience, right? Like if you've built up an audience over the course of producing it, where you say, okay, we have 20,000 people who are following us, who are a member of our Discord, or a member who are like our page on Facebook, or
Most
whatever.
likely count on to subscribe to watch this.
Right. People who are going to be involved. And I don't know how much, you could even say, here's the person, we've polled them, and here's the percentage that already are subscribed, but there's a big percentage that aren't. Yeah. Would you want to have our product, especially if it's a young and upcoming streamer? Because right now it's the Wild West of streaming.
Yep.
So you've got Paramount on the, on the field, you've got Apple TV, everybody
have everything down to Canon Plus. Like, I mean,
exactly.
Canon even has one.
So everybody is launching streaming services, and they're all looking for content and they have money to invest because they have a bigger platform of other things, right? So they want to get more people involved, because the more people, let's say you bring 20,000, I mean, this is just business sense. And I know this kind of stuff to some people is like, duh, but to some people, especially filmmakers or young aspiring filmmakers, not thinking through this business side can be the death of them ever getting anything out. So You take something to Canon Plus, for instance, and say, hey, I've got this series. Well, if you've got a built-in audience of 20,000 people, and now 20,000 people are going to be exposed to Canon Plus and they've got to get on the Canon Plus app, well, then those kind of people who would come to your film, if it's in the genre or the vein of what Canon Plus would want, then like they're going to say, okay, these people are probably going to watch our other offerings and they're probably going to end up buying our books, and they might end up, subscribing to this or that. Like, and so then for them, it's not just a matter of how many people buy the tickets, right? It's like a bigger question.
Building like a synergy, like
it's Amazon Prime,
snowball, man.
Yeah.
Amazon has its fingers in every pie.
Exactly.
All the pies.
The pies.
What pie do they not have their fingers in?
Blackberry. I don't know. They probably have their fingers in Blackberry.
Yeah, probably. They probably bought it. I don't know.
They have the copyrights to Blackberry.
Yeah. Just like the fruit itself.
You can't grow it.
It's Amazon berry now. Alexa berries.
Alexa, give me a Blackberry. Alexa,
do you mean Amazon berry? Yes.
Yes. Sorry, Alexa.
That one.
That's what I was talking about.
Yes.
Yep. So it's just really interesting. It's a really interesting time for filmmakers and people who are producers right now, because if you can get stuff out there, there are a lot of people who want content. Yeah. And so go make it. Figure out ways to do it cheap.
You want to get in there before before they figure out the formula,
Yeah.
Like we were talking about, like before they like actually like have their people, like, oh, they already have a list. It's already full up. Yeah, the guest list isn't full. Like,
no.
Yeah.
You can show up to the party.
There.
So go there.
Cool things.
Well, we have been gone. Last week it was just me flying solo without a wingman, as I like to say, after watching Top Gun.
Be my wingman anytime.
So we weren't able to talk about anything that was cool that we've been finding cool in the world. So in the interim, while you've been gone and I've been gone, what's been cool?
Oh, dude, so many cool things. A big arc that stays consistent always is my love of music and listening to music, creating playlists all day, every day, for different moods and different things. But I love creating playlists for what I like to write, and for characters and things like that. So like when I'm doing D&D, I have playlists for each of my characters. Like each of the players most of the times have their own playlists. Each of the major bad guys or good guys. That way I can listen to it and I can get in that mode and I can think kind of like this is what they would listen to, or this is a moment that I want them to have, like, because that's my favorite thing in any movie or any TV show is when it's set to music and it's set very well. Like in Stranger Things, for those who have seen it. Josh has not seen it yet.
Not yet, no. So don't drop any spoilers.
Anyway, there's a really cool moment in that. Or you can just think of like John Wick when like the club music's like going. And he's just like tactical reloading to the beat, or an Edgar Wright movie.
Have you watched? I was gonna say, if you watch Baby Driver.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I love Baby Driver so much.
Yeah.
But no,
up your alley.
I've been working on a playlist for that Samson movie that we decided to cast a little while ago, and we've done a little bit more work in our mind palaces on how that story would kind of hammer out. And so I made a sick playlist with some cool artists on there, not necessarily things that like you would think for a Bible epic. I didn't put like the 300 soundtrack on there or anything like that. I put things like the Beastie Boys is on there for Sabotage, is like the opening song, and then you got like the Who's on there for like Behind Blue Eyes for like capping the end of it, and just an assortment of other little songs throughout there. I can get into a list of it, but yeah,
it's awesome. Like I picture pitch meetings in studio executives' offices, as in boardrooms, as being like you show up with a projector and you've got like all the images from other movies or photographs from people that you're like, these are kind of the moods I want to evoke, right? But I have never pictured like music as a part of something like that. But
that's how I pitch everything.
When you explained Samson, while you're like, okay, I've got a plot for Samson, how to like write it, and you're walking me through it and playing the music, I'm like, I'm on board. Let's do this.
Yeah,
like, it was so awesome.
That's good.
I'm like, man, we need any movie pitch needs to include music. Like that, it just does something that sets the mood better than like images can. Yeah. That it just, it's good. It's awesome.
Here's a little exercise. So listen to Reach Out, I'll Be There by the Four Tops. It's a soul kind of like
Okay.
soul song with like that 70s time frame. And imagine a wizard riding across a battlefield and riding with like intent to try to make it to a kingdom. And out of nowhere, a blue dragon appears and he gets into a really cool battle with him, and then you get a title screen. So hopefully, if you listen to that and you hear, like, you think of that, those two will fit together.
That's awesome.
But you just wouldn't think it. But that's what happens
Sweet.
in my head.
That's
and
amazing.
it's really weird, but I love
Insight
it.
into Elijah's head through
Yeah.
the ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What have you been finding cool?
So I wanted to recommend a book that I read that kind of goes in line with this whole Netflix thing we were just talking about. It's called Filmtrepreneur by Alex. Forgot the name of a guy again. Hang on. Filmtrepreneur, like entrepreneur, but combined with film.
I was like, are you mispronouncing noir?
No.
Like, noir.
So he has a entire website. Alex
Yeah.
Ferrari, that's his name.
Ooh, that's
And
a cool
he has,
name.
yeah, it's a pretty sweet name, isn't it?
It's a
He's
fast
got
name.
a lot of he's got a lot of experience making movies
Yeah.
on his own as like low budget. I mean, think Robert Rodriguez style movies, you know, like low end,
Yeah.
but like crazy
Like,
high stuff.
yeah.
He has a book that he wrote called Shooting for the Mob, and he was making this movie and ended up actually getting involved in the mob accidentally in making this movie. And I haven't read that book, but the stories that he told in his book, Filmtrepreneur, that apparently were part of that book, were just bonkers level stuff that happened in
Oh, wow.
trying to make this film. It was just really,
Is he related
really
in
funny.
making the Sopranos? Is that it?
no, it wasn't that. It was his own. I think he was making his own thing. So here's the a bipolar gangster, a naive young filmmaker, and Batman. What could go wrong? Alex Ferrari is a first-time film director who just got hired to direct a $20 million feature film. The only problem is the film is about Jimmy, an egomaniacal gangster who wants the film to be about his life in the mob. From the backwater towns of Louisiana to Hollywood Hills, Alex has taken on a crazy misadventure through the world of the mafia and Hollywood. Huge movie stars, billion-dollar procedures, studio heads, and of course a few gangsters pop up in this unbelievable journey down the rabbit hole of chasing your dream. So anyway, that's the story, true story about his experience filming with the mob, basically. So really interesting. But the Filmtrepreneur book is really fascinating, and he's got a website. I forget now the name of that, and maybe I could see a link to that somewhere here. But he's got a whole website that is about filmmaking, and you can subscribe to it, very similar to like you can subscribe to Netflix.
Yeah.
But it's more of just behind the scenes, interviews with filmmakers, things like that can be helpful to filmmakers. In the Filmtrepreneur, though, he talks about that side we were just mentioning, how to do business, how to get your movie to be profitable, how to think through what you can do with your movie to help it make you money.
Yeah.
And while I don't think that the filmmaker or anyone for that matter should have money as their aim in terms of like, all I'm about is profit. A company though, like exists for profit. So it's, you know, so there's that give and take, but if your aim is to make movies, you have to have money. And if you participate in an economy and don't do it as a charity, then you should expect that if I have a good movie, that people are going to come to see it.
Yeah.
And if I give you something worth having, which is this, it goes back to an idea of that I at least heard about from a book called Wealth and Power by George Gilder, that the capitalism or economy, while it seems selfish, it always starts with gift. It always starts with someone making something for others that they think they need, but that is not always a guarantee, right? Like, so it's saying, I'm going to make this thing, and I believe that it's valuable and has value in the world. And so I'm going to make it, and I'm going to hope you come and buy the tickets and watch my movie, right? And then it is valuable enough that you come back or that you tell other people, and then it grows, right?
Yeah.
And then for the business people, there's investors who are saying, I believe in this person, that person is going to create something amazing, and I want to be part of that. And so they invest on the front end, you know, and then that's how the economy works. Is someone is putting something up, believing that the thing they're putting the money for is valuable and is going to give them some kind of return. And even as a consumer, when I go and buy a camera or when I go and buy a piece of equipment for the podcast, I'm buying it with the idea that that's going to be valuable, you know? And so it's just thinking through the business aspect of filmmaking. So it's a really interesting book. worth people's time, I think.
It's legit.
And now, our feature presentation.
So this week, we are going to have a stream of consciousness episode. We are only here to just chat.
Just a chat.
Digital therapy
Mm-hmm.
for free. You don't even have to pay for this, guys.
Nope.
You can just sit in and listen.
Just lay down on a couch
Yep.
and listen.
Plug in the ear pods.
Answer some questions maybe out loud.
Yeah. Tell us.
Might
about
be
yourself.
weird to those around you, but it'd be fun. Be fun for us. Tell us the story. Tell us what happens.
It makes me think of Big Hero 6, one of my favorite, I don't have a lot of favorites, but one of a great Disney film where Fred is this one character in it, and he's the grandson of Stan Lee, basically, in the movie.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, and so
Big
he's
Hero
like
6.
talking about all the things he wants to make,
Yeah.
all the different inventions. And he's like, how about an invisible sandwich? Imagine you're just eating your lunch and everyone else thinks you're crazy.
Yeah,
That's what he wants to make.
seriously.
That's what I see, is just
Yeah.
you sitting on your couch answering questions and everyone's just thinking you're wild.
What was the last thing that you ate? That's cool.
Interesting.
Can you say it louder? I didn't hear you.
Scream
There
it
you
so
go.
your neighbor hears you.
Anyway.
Well, we are going to talk just randomly about film stuff. So what's been going on in your mind, filmmaking wise? What have you been thinking about movies? What's happening?
Filmmaking wise, I've been thinking, because we've been talking about kind of what we talked about for that whole Netflix thing outside of the show. Just kind of about how to jump into that space of filmmaking. I know that, recently I got a new laptop and doing some editing, which has been really
Nice.
cool. I love it. Really rewarding
Sweet.
work. And so that's been really enjoyable. And then just from a story point of view, just trying to hammer out some details on some stories that I really think that could be achievable. And that's just been the biggest thing, is transitioning my projects in my head, which I have so many in process of about to spit out into the main forum of my brain, is just kind of figuring out how, like, the filter of, is it something that can be made? And then kind of pushing everything through the Play-Doh mold of that. It's kind of where my head's at. So I've been thinking about, like, a Christian horror movie. That's kind of been where my head's been at.
Nice.
Even though I don't like horror movies that much. I think it would be pretty cool. I like them. I like the idea of them. And I've watched a lot of scary things. But I think
cool.
that's where my head's been lately.
Nice.
What about you?
Yeah. In terms of filmmaking, I don't know that I've had a whole lot of thoughts. My mind's been pretty busy on other things. But the Netflix idea, or just the opportunity that I feel like sits in front of people like us.
Yeah.
In terms of, if we make it, if you build it, they will come. And it feels like right now, and maybe I'm misreading the situation, but it feels like it's the kind of thing that if you have something that's quality, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's a big if, but if you have something that's quality, that there's a market for it. Now that's where you have to play the business game,
Yep.
right? To make something that people want to buy. But right now it feels like they want to buy everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least they're desperately looking for content. So if you can check their boxes, you're done. Now you've got to check their boxes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's made me think, okay, I have that opportunity is on the table. What should I be doing with it, and how can I, capitalize on that opportunity right now with the time that I have, in terms of just sheer time throughout the week to be able to get stuff done. So, one of the things I remember back when I was several years ago back in Oklahoma, I wanted to make a movie or a short film, and began reading about how people were making short films. I started looking online, watching behind the scenes of short films that had been made, just kind of learning everything that I could, trying to get ideas. And one of the people said something that I think made a lot of sense, just like you referenced a second ago, like what can be made. Mm-hmm. And they said, what props do you have? What people do you have access to? Don't try to write the film and then try to figure out how to get it made.
Yeah.
Like when you're starting here, don't do that. There's a game designer I follow who has had a lot of success in indie games, and he made his first game and it ended up getting released on Steam and eventually on the Nintendo Switch. and his last game got picked up by Apple Arcade, and he's got several. So he's done really well.
Yeah.
But what he talks about is how when he began, he wanted to make a AAA game. But what he ended up having to pivot to is realizing I can't make a AAA game, but I can make a 2D platformer, and I can make it really pretty. That's what I'm good at, because he was a graphic designer to start with. And he's like, that's what I'm good at. I'm going to lean into my strengths. We're going to get that done. And it ended up looking awesome and was a great story.
Yeah.
Really fascinating and wonderful. Like
What,
it
what
was
games
cool.
does he make?
The first one is called Pinstripe, and it's just a 2D platformer game about a dad who's lost his daughter. And it's weird and quirky and fantastical and, you know, kind of dark, and just, I love it.
Yeah.
And then the second one was called Never Song, and it's about this kid who's kind of all the adults are gone, and there's this dreamscape, and it's like he's been lost, and you're trying to figure out where he is and what he's doing. It's like he's an amnesiac, and so he ends up trying to find his sister, I believe. And then he's got another one coming out called Father, which is is going to be a 3D shooter game in the vein of like Resident Evil or that kind of style. That is a 3D shooter, and about a dad whose daughter went off to college and has been like taken, and so he's going to get her. Like this is
Interesting.
Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Goes to boarding school, right? Like that's kind of the thing. So like a lot of father type games about fatherhood and family and things like that. So that's really interesting themes.
Yeah.
But he made that kind of stuff just leaning in to start with to what he was good at. So I wrote a short film about. I had a kayak and we had a canoe. I had a kayak, my brother had a canoe. I'm like, what can we do with these things? And we worked on what we could do with them. And I wrote a short film, and I was starting to think through how to shoot it. Never got anywhere close to shooting it, and just left it sit for a little while. And then my brother left, and I didn't have a canoe, so it was done, and then it just went in the drawer. But it's that kind of thing that like, what do we have around us now? What do we have access to? What are the kind of things we could do? What could we make? You know, that's the kind of, I guess, questions that then are on the table. And where are the places that we can? Where are our strengths? In terms of production. And so if that's where we can shine, let's like really shine a light and lean into the things that we're really good at. Make something that in those moments feels amazing, and then let everything else that we're not so good at kind of fade into the background a little bit. And just, you know, hope that everything works, that the whole package is good enough that then that attracts other people who can fill in the gaps where there's weaknesses. You know, in terms of like thinking of trying to build a filmmaking career and make stuff, that's one of the things. The other thing that I think of a lot is just how do I practice the craft on a regular basis when you're not making movies?
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about that is looking at, like, for one, like, it's always like the go make the thing and go learn, like, and understanding, like, we're looking at, well, like, and this just comes from like the Christian worldview too, is just understanding like that every day counts, every second counts, and ultimately there's things that are worth investing in, that have eternal value, and that every action has meaning to it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the cool things about like just living life and doing the things that we're called to do, is naturally we're picking things up as we're going. Naturally we're picking up more ideas, more things that go into our brain, especially for the storyteller. I think Doug Wilson talked about it, like living that life that's worth telling a story about makes you a better writer. And just kind of like, even if we are going to make a movie or something, or if we do something like that, just seeing that it might not be the greatest, but like that there's so much learning that happens in those experiences.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking it'd be a really good idea to do a radio play, for something, an idea that we had,
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
and that would be really cool.
Right.
And that would really help you with sound work.
Writing.
It'd help you with editing. And once again, writing,
That's true.
voice acting, being able to schedule things out, being able to find actors, being able to figure out a way to publish it. So already, like, just doing something like that where you go, you know what, I can't animate this. I can't shoot this. I don't have the people to do this. But what I do have is I do have a voice. I have people who have voices.
Right.
I can maybe only do
That's
one
really
voice, but I know
fascinating.
people who can do a bunch of voices. Like we can
right.
actually do this. Like, what do I need to do to like personally do this?
Right.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. That's a great idea, because it's one of those ways that I was talking to you just the other day about
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan, and one of his choices on one of his first movies, his first feature film that he did, one of his choices was to not shoot in color. He could take color film stock or black and white, and he chose black and white because that eliminates one problem point. When you have black and white, all you've got to think of is contrast and shape of light and direction of light, that kind of thing. But when you have color, now you've got to think of film temperature or color temperature, the light bulb temperatures. You've got a lot of other things to start thinking about, a lot of other decisions to make. And he just said, I'm going to take that off the table and I'm going to make, this movie in this way.
Yeah.
And that ultimately helps him focus in on the other things that he's better at.
Yeah.
And so a radio play,
If you're a good writer, it's perfect. The writing
got-
will stand out.
you've got the writing, and as long as you're thinking through the whole production and like, okay, I don't have to say this or have have that described anywhere by a character. I can just have a sound that indicates where you are, right? Like you hear hammer on tin, and you hear the loud whir of a grinder, right? Like already, even me describing that verbally, you've got a picture in your head of what you're thinking. Now we all might be thinking something different, but if the aim is to have people thinking of the context, they're going to a train yard, right? Or something like that. Then someone's working, or it's an iron mill, or,
Yeah. I mean,
suddenly things start coming into people's heads and you can let people's imaginations fill in those gaps.
exactly. Like I was listening to the Deacons podcast and he was interviewing the guys who did The Lighthouse. And did
Roger
the Northman.
Eggers and
Whatever the other guy's name is.
I forget the other one.
Yeah.
I'll pull it up while you
The DP and the director. And they were just talking about the fact that like where they came from. And one of them came from stage, I believe. And because he came from stage, and then the way he had a really good hand and a lot of practice in the art department and practical effects and how to do all these things. And so naturally, you can see that is like the highlight of his movies.
Yeah.
Is just the practicals look so good because he's so well practiced in that. Same thing for the DP. Like he's just really good at doing photography and really good at doing just
Yarn
DPing a
Blask.
project.
I think I don't know how to pronounce the last name or the first name for that matter.
Yeah.
But I think it's Yarn. It's J, but it's is it
Sounds
Jaren?
Scandinavian.
Yeah, like Norwegian or
Probably
something.
yarn. Yeah. J's usually have the yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
Right.
like
Yeah,
the director
exactly.
of Catching Fire and the rest of the Hunger Games movies, those movies have their own pitfalls, but they look pretty good.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
because the director is actually a photographer on the outside. And he has an eye for lighting. Like and I was watching the behind the scenes on it, and the DP said they really loved the director because he knew when to film things and when he couldn't film things and it would look terrible. So he would plan his schedule around the movement of the sun and the weather. So that way it would be a consistent visual
Right,
film.
yeah.
So like if you're doing that sound play, that audio play, like, and that's all you can do, and you're just pushing at it and you're just pumping out product.
Right.
Naturally, if you take those ideas and you go into, you have the full production, you have video, you have sound, your sound's going to be on point.
Yeah,
and
exactly,
that'll be a
exactly.
signature in your
Right.
in your
And
quality.
I know a lot of filmmakers who I've followed who talk about their short films. They viewed their short films as opportunities as kind of a master class in a specific skill set. So there's a short film, or not, it's not a short film, a feature film on Amazon Prime called The Vast of the Night, and it is a fantastic movie.
Yeah, you mentioned this one.
Yeah, it's so, the dialogue is so snappy.
Yeah.
Like it's Tarantino-esque, not in its not. I mean, it's Tarantino-esque in its
natural
skill set.
sounding.
It's very natural sounding, but it's so snappy. So it's like heightened realism, in the term that all dialogue really is. But it's so snappy, and it's all a one-shot movie, and it has that feel of like an old-timey. It's not a one-shot movie. It has very long takes, I should say, like 10-minute takes. And it's a very like classic science fiction movie. Feels like War of the Worlds, the original one, or the like Time Machine, or like it's stuff like that. Like it's just really interesting. But the guy talked about how he and his friends he had one time in his life where he's like, I'm going to learn dialogue. And he sat down and he would write dialogue scenes and then they'd perform it and see what they were like. And then he kept honing in on that one thing. And then he moved on to some other thing. And due to commercial work that they were doing as a production company, they got really good at camera work and like some of the long take stuff that they had practiced there. So then they just combined all their skills and came together, and that's what they made. And yeah, so I think that kind of thing would be a really cool place to start. So maybe in a future episode of Foxfire Farmhouse, we'll debut a radio play that we've worked on, because that would be really cool. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
There are, when it comes to storytelling in digital media, there are so many ways that the story can come alive.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that just really excites me about the potential of digital media and things like this.
The key is just being creative and practicing being creative.
Yeah.
Like it won't not pay. Like it'll flow into the next thing. It's just a learning experience.
And you just don't always know how it's going to flow in either. It's one of those things that by faith you have to just do it and do something well.
Yeah.
Enjoy it and trust that there is something that you can do with it.
That's why you can't be looking at it for money. You just got to look at it for making something.
The love of the thing itself.
Yeah.
Yep. Make something beautiful. Make something true.
Exactly.
Well, this has been Foxfire Farmhouse. We're glad you've stuck around here for us to talk about filmmaking. This has been a lot of fun, and we will be with you in future weeks. If you have questions or comments or ideas for the podcast, Josh at foxfirefarmhouse.com, podcast at foxfirefarmhouse.com. Don't send it to Josh. Thanks, guys.
Bye.